Okay, cool. So I'll just give everybody a moment to drop in and then we'll get started. So hello everybody, great to have you here. I'll just share my screen, so bear with me 1 second. Okay, so here we are. Today our webinar is on the topic of understanding your child's natural temperament. And we'll discuss why that's important and how you can support your child's learning by understanding. So Education Angels is, as you know, a home-based education business, and our philosophy is all around holistic education that gives children wings to fly. So we believe that education is not just about what we learn and what knowledge we retain, but it's about learning about ourselves, building our social competence, our emotional literacy, vocabulary, and really growing our self-awareness. That's the most important thing. And with that, we can learn anything because it grows our confidence and our ability to learn and engage well with other people. So let me just, having a bit of a technology challenge for a second. So what do we mean by natural temperament? Well, it's our natural way of being, how we relate in the world that we live in. So it can affect our moods, our emotions, how we respond to different situations, different people, and how we cope in certain events and situations. And indicators of different types of temperament, you'll hear parents say this as, why is my child so bossy? That's quite common. Or she seems so sensitive lately. Or why is he so grumpy? Or I'm really worried because my child seems withdrawn. These all sound like behavioral challenges. There's no pleasing her, like maybe children just don't know what they want, or whatever you do, they're not happy, or why is my child so emotional? And all these situations, and I'm sure you can think of many more as parents and educators, all these situations and all these questions that we find ourselves asking about our children can be quite challenging. And it's really, emotionally challenging for us, as well as us wanting to do the very best for our children. It's very easy to misinterpret or misunderstand what's being communicated through our children's behaviour. So why is it important to understand the unique personality of our children as well? Well, it helps us to avoid or to limit stressful situations. It supports us in understanding our children more so that we can set realistic expectations of his or her behaviour, or the children we care for. It might not be your own child. And it supports us to teach them to manage their emotions. So that, in order to teach them to self-regulate, which is a really, really important skill. And I'm sure, like me, many of you know adults who actually don't necessarily know how to manage their emotions. Well, learning how to master our emotions and how to self-regulate starts in early childhood. And the more we can intentionally teach this in the early years, the more capable our young adults and adults will be in the future. So first seek to understand is a common phrase. First seek to understand what your child's behavior is telling you, but also what how they interact in the world. Observe that and you'll better understand their temperament and be able to set them up for success. So what are the learning outcomes for understanding our child's temperament and personalizing experiences or learning experiences that support the individual temperament? Well, our children grow massively in confidence if we can set them up for success by putting them into situations that they can cope with, or then situations that might overwhelm them. Then they'll grow in confidence. They'll increase their social competence, their ability to relate to other children, other adults, and be able to cope in social situations. It supports children to regulate their own emotions, which we talked about before. It certainly improves behaviour, because you can avoid many potential behavioural challenges. So it definitely helps with that. And it reduces stress on both parent or educator and child. And in doing that, you're improving your relationship with your child. And so that's always got to be good news, hasn't it? Having harmony in your education setting or your home learning and environment. And in doing that, you're promoting opportunities for learning. You're going to accelerate your child's ability to learn, because we all know, and there's plenty of research out there that proves this, that when children are stressed, they're not in a state of learning. They're more in fight or flight, or in a coping situation, which is not a good state for gaining new knowledge or skills. So by understanding our child's natural temperament, we accelerate the learning process too. So remembering too that all experiences in the early years are shaping our brains. So, you know, certainly in the first 1,000 days, the first 3 to 5 years, then every experience a child has is shaping their brain, which can affect their whole future. So we can intentionally shape their brains so that they can cope with stressful situations and they can self-regulate. And there's a little bit of background noise, so I hope everybody can hear me okay. So on that, I want to talk about the whole concept of genius. So we believe that every child is born a genius. And, you know, there's this quote, which is by Einstein, actually, that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. And that really sums it up perfectly, because we are all different and we all have different temperaments and different personalities. So expecting every child to cope with the same situation, expecting every child to be able to achieve the same milestones and to grow and develop at the same pace as the next child, with that expectation, we're already setting them up for failure. And we know too that if we see our children as competent learners and have high expectations of them, then the chances are that they will succeed and they will reach those expectations, or, you know, achieve well. If we have low expectations of children, then all research points to the fact that children will achieve them too. So we see all our children as capable and competent. We see every child as a unique individual, as a genius, and we tailor our learning experiences and we support towards the individual temperaments of children. And we can talk about that a little bit more as we go on. So when we talk about the word genius, we don't mean just specially gifted children, and we don't mean children with, say, diverse learning needs. We mean every single person is a genius. And the meaning of the word genius was, the ancient Romans believed your genius was your unique spirit that resides within your body for the whole of your life. So, and it's derived from two Latin terms, genius meaning as above, and ingenium, a related noun meaning innate dispositions and inborn talents. So if we understand the word genius meaning every person's innate dispositions and inborn talents, then we know that everybody's a genius, because we all have special talents and innate dispositions. And when we talk about the innate dispositions, we're talking about their personality, how children appear to other people, how they function in society. So if we understand that too, we also understand that we're all born uniquely, perfectly imperfect individuals. None of us are perfect, but we're all perfect and imperfect, just like everybody else. And we all have our own talents and our abilities. So if we can appreciate them in ourselves, and we can teach our young children to appreciate that in everybody else as well, then we're creating social harmony, and again, setting them up for success socially and emotionally. So, and you know, this quote by Aristotle, I think, sums it up too, is there's nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequals. So it's a bit of a tongue twister, but essentially we cannot treat every child the same because we're all so different. If we treat them all the same, then we're being equal in the treatment of our children. So different children can cope with different situations better than others. So we must ensure that we personalize the learning and we treat every child as an individual. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. So this we talk about when we look at the genius temperaments. Sam, I don't know whether you can help with the background noise on here because it's quite loud my end. When we look at the genius temperaments, then we're basing this on Roger James Hamilton's work, which is around his talent dynamics profiling and wealth dynamics profiling too. And so we're looking at the genius energies. And so his work was based on the ancient Book of Changes, the I Ching, which is 3,000-year-old BC ancient wisdom. And it's based on the Chinese elements. And also Richard Wilhelm and Carl Jung did a lot of work interpreting the I Ching as well. And a lot of the psychometric tests that are around today are based on this. So you can learn a bit more about this, Roger Hamilton's work, and I'll provide some links at the end of the webinar in case you want to go and do some quizzes for yourself and learn more about your individual genius. But just to acknowledge Roger's work on this. So essentially, to make it easier to understand, there are 4 basic genius types. So we've got dynamo genius, tempo genius, blaze genius, and steel genius. And what that looks like is dynamo genius here at the top, they are intuitive, so kind of daydreamers, head in the clouds, always coming up with ideas, etc. And then we have the opposite, who are tempo genius. They're more sensory, they're in tune with other people's feelings, a different kind of intuition. They more tune into other people, whereas dynamo will tune into ideas, thoughts, and insights. So we have those 2 types, dynamo and tempo. Then we go left, right to steel and blaze. So steel genius people are introverted and blaze genius people are extroverted. So when we look at these genius types, they essentially represent the brain. So the frontal lobe is the seat of intuition. The temporal lobe is linked to our senses, all of our senses. And then we have right brain, who are extroverted people, and left brain, who are more introverted. Now, please know that we know, and you know too, that nobody is right-brained or left-brained. Everybody uses the whole of their brain. All of us, all of the time. We don't just use one half. If we're introverted, we're not just left-brained. For example, we all use the whole of our brain. But each of us, as we develop and as we grow, and you know, that unique spirit, we find that we use some areas of the brain are more dominant in how we naturally think. Our inborn natural temperament means that we are maybe using one part of the brain is more dominant than the other part. So it looks something like this. So we have, sorry, that didn't work, did it? Like this. So if we look at our different temperaments and overlay them on the brain, then, you know, tempo people, this part of their brain is more dominant than the dynamo, which is the frontal lobe, etc. So each of you, just like our children, each of you have a natural genius as well. And like I say, I can give you a link and you can go and do the genius test in your own time and find out which type of genius you are. But the idea of sharing this for the children is so we get the concept of that we are all uniquely different and have a different way of thinking. In our different way of thinking, we also have a different learning style, a different leadership style. So it does go a lot deeper than this, but initially we'll just talk about the 4 basic geniuses. So if we look at a dynamo genius, then dynamo genius people are creative. They're very, very task focused. So for dynamo genius children, they're, you know, always up to something, very, very busy, always coming up with ideas, very imaginative in their play. And they can get very, very engrossed in their activities and experiences. They don't like being told what to do. They love variety and they love to have a sense of freedom. But also they can be quite a daydreamer. So, you know, you may find that they'll just be off in another world of their own in the imaginal realm and daydreaming quite a lot. Now, please know that all children are imaginative. We all know this, don't we? But if you're a dynamo child, a dynamo genius child, you will find that they will their need for that sense of variety and the sense of freedom is really, really important. You will find that they'll stay on task for extended periods of time. And looking at their opposite, their weakness is the opposite genius, which is tempo. So they get easily bored. So trying to keep a dynamo child busy can be quite challenging because their boredom threshold is really, really low. And they don't like to follow rules and structure. They'll be the one making up the rules rather than following them. And they're not necessarily good at timing or in tune with their senses. So a dynamo child can be so busy in their play and on their tasks, they might forget that they're hungry. They might not care about getting absolutely soaking wet and being really cold. It just doesn't enter their awareness because they're so task focused and so busy in what they're doing, they might not even notice. So they need support to self-regulate. They need support to maybe sometimes slow down, and also supporting remembering to perform different tasks when they need to, like, you know, the simple routines that we might provide for children. Routine and structure can help dynamo children stay in balance. Without it, they'd just be crazy, up to all sorts all of the time. So really little dynamo, little bundles of energy. And then, so that's a typical dynamo child. And again, we're talking about extremes as well. So there's all different blends of how strong they are in the dynamo energy as well. Then we have the opposite, which is the tempo child. Remember, this is the temporal lobe of the lobe of the brain. So very, very sensitive to the feelings of other people. So tempo children can become very overwhelmed in busy environments. They can, or, you know, with lots of people around, they can be really sensitive and get upset just if they see people in distress. So, you know, really caring, nurturing individuals. It's really important for tempo children to know what's happening and when it's happening. If you spring too many surprises on them, they'll become stressed and overwhelmed. They are, like I say, very caring and nurturing in their nature, and they learn by doing. They're very, very practical. Best not to rush them. If you rush them, again, they become overwhelmed. Tempo children like to do everything all in good time and be given plenty of time and plenty of notice before you know, going out for the day or going on a shopping trip or making big changes in their lives. They can be easily overwhelmed in busy or loud environments. So, you know, if you take a tempo child to a very busy environment or loud and overstimulating environments, don't be surprised if you see behavioral challenges, if they have meltdowns or they become moody or, you know, sulky or maybe not listening to you, because that's a sign that they're overwhelmed with that situation. They can be very stubborn. So, you know, they might be sensitive, but they're very strong individuals, and they can be very, very stubborn if they want to be. They like order and structure, and they thrive on predictability. So that's a tempo genius child. And then we have the blaze genius. Now, blaze genius children are the life and soul of the party. They're very extroverted. They love people and social situations, and they're very fun-loving. They love group activities and experiences because for them it's all about socializing with other people. They're very often the loudest in a group of children and can sometimes be blamed for things that they've not done. You know, they might be the one that's seen doing all these crazy things or getting up to mischief, but they might not necessarily be the instigator. They're just the loudest and they're most extroverted and outgoing. They can be labelled as a show-off. They can be seen as being loud and brash. They can be very talkative. They don't like to spend too much time alone, and they're very, very excitable. So they love people. They're very warm, they're very open, and really like social butterflies. So you find that Blaze children can get very upset if they think that other children are not their friends or they're excluded from a group situation. And then finally, we have our Steel Genius, who is the opposite to the Blaze. So our Steel Genius children are introverted. They're more logical in their thinking and they like to analyze information. So what does that look like for a child? Well, for a child, that analyzing information can mean that they maybe don't involve themselves in activities or experiences until they are sure they can succeed. So they might be the observers on the outside, waiting to see what happens, see what everybody else does, and they're just building a knowledge base around what will happen if I step in and take part in this experience. And very often left to work it out for themselves, they'll join in and they'll be happy to do that. But, you know, sometimes they might be the last one to join a group or the last one to volunteer for an activity. And that can sometimes concern parents because you think they're withdrawn and not participating, but that's not necessarily always the case. When they're ready to take the step, they are certain they know they're going to succeed and they'll do well. And that often is the case. Steel energy children tend to do well in traditional school environments because they learn, they've got a scientific, logical way of thinking. So that whole read-write structure of learning seems to work well for them. And they have a strong sense of right or wrong. So they really don't like injustice. Everything's black or white. And if they see or experience injustice, it can really upset them, or perceived injustice. So our Steel energy children don't like to be put on the spot. So they don't like to be the center of attention. So if you single them out and ask them to, you know, I don't know, perform in front of other people or to do something they're not comfortable with doing, then they'll retreat right back into their shell. And they can sometimes feel very uncomfortable in large groups of groups of people, and also meeting new people as well. So they are often labeled as shy and, you know, don't like to be the first to put themselves forward in new situations. So they like familiarity and they can struggle with change. So it's really important for each of these young geniuses that we get to understand what's going to support them. We get to understand what their individual geniuses are and to set them up for success. So thinking about the Steel Genius child, then, you know, asking them to participate in a drama class maybe and be the first on the stage and to come up with all the ideas and to behave in a very extroverted way is not setting them up for success at all. They take a longer time to warm to those new situations. Yes, they can be amazing actors. They can still participate in drama, but allow them to do things in their own time and to take that brave step forwards when they feel comfortable to do so, rather than, you know, being there pushing them to go up and wondering why they're so shy and they're not going to participate. If they have the opportunity to observe these activities or experiences from the sidelines and they can be encouraged to join in when they feel comfortable, then they're likely to participate and to succeed in that experience. And when we think about the dynamo genius, don't expect a dynamo child to be able to regulate their own time, their own day, because they are so busy and task focused, they might not even remember it's mealtime. So, or that it's time to get ready for bed, or it's time to go to school, or whatever it might be that you're asking them to do. So if we understand that for our dynamo genius children, that they like to have a sense of freedom, they're very creative, they're easily bored, then set up the day so that they have lots of variety. They can make lots of choices about how their day is going to go. Yes, you might limit the choices. We've talked about this before, haven't we? The way to avoid behavioral challenges sometimes is to give children a choice rather than tell them what to do. So this strategy is perfect for dynamo genius children. So you might say, would you like a red apple or a green apple? Or would you like to wear your blue jeans or your black jeans? These are strategies to avoid that whole potential behavioral challenge around them wanting to be able to make choices for themselves. So, so we can give lots of examples of the different geniuses and how to support them. And I think we'll do future webinars on behaviours and maybe break it down in a lot more detail for each of these. But just as a big picture overview and to understand the concept, I'm doing a whole run through on them all. So, you know, tempo genius again, tempo genius children being so caring and nurturing. It's really important we're aware of the energy of a situation we're putting children into. So they are going to be very adversely affected by going into an environment where there's lots of conflict, or where there's, you know, people upset with each other or arguing, or other children are upset. They'll take all of that on themselves. So we need to support our tempo children to, yes, embrace their beautiful, caring and nurturing nature, but not take it all on themselves, to actually manage their energy and manage their emotions so that they are not affected by absolutely everything that happens to everybody else. And there are ways we can do that. And also giving them opportunities to channel that lovely, caring nature that they have. So, and again, tempo energy, blaze energy children, often labeled as being a show off, or, you know, always being bossy or being too talkative. And they're not intending to be any of that. They're fun-loving, extroverted people who love social situations. So they get so enthusiastic about being around people, being able to party with their friends, that they can sometimes unintentionally dominate a situation. So it's just teaching our blaze children to, you know, helping them to just tone it down, or to be thinking about other people a little bit more. They're not being selfish, they're just excited and really enthusiastic about what's happening. So if we understand our children's natural temperament, it stops us labeling our children as well. You know, all these things I've talked about, like selfish, bossy, shy, withdrawn, all these labels that we, society, everybody uses to explain a child's temperament. If we actually really understand them, then we are going to see them for the individual genius that they are, and we're going to set them up for success by promoting an environment that really supports their learning. So I will just nip on to, we'll go to questions soon. If anybody does have any questions, please do put any questions in chat, and we'll just open up for questions in about 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah. So coming back to providing a supportive learning environment, you know, look at the energetic environment, because we are holistic beings. You know, look at the energetic environment, the physical environment, and the learning environment, i.e. the activities and experiences that we offer our children. Oops, sorry, I've got a message coming in. I just have to stop this. Sorry about that. So if we look at the learning environment, there are some things that we can do to support each of these geniuses. So for a dynamo genius, having lots of activities out, problem solving toys, art and craft activities, and an imagination area, an area that is set aside for just imaginative play with loose parts is a perfect example of that. So and I don't know if you're not familiar with the term loose parts, it's like just lots of a variety of odds and ends, bits and pieces that you find all over the place, like I don't know, like big bolts or like natural resources, stones, sticks, pieces of old tools, so long as they're safe, old tools, pieces of plumbing that are no longer have a use. Just a whole load of loose parts, and let your dynamo child just use all those parts and those resources for whatever they see fit. Really, really good resource for developing critical thinking skills and creativity as well. For our Blaze children, they thrive in the role play area where social play is encouraged, or in group sports and games, and they love opportunities to meet new people, which is why we always make sure we have play groups, we have forest schools within Education Angels, all of them. If we're running one in your environment, the public are welcome to, because we see the value of those opportunities for children's learning. It's really important we give them lots of opportunities for social play. Our tempo children, give them a sensory area or room, or even sensory toys, like the squishy things or different fabrics, or quiet music, or quiet spaces like a cozy book corner, or space in the natural environment, caring for the gardens, caring for the animals, just allowing them to tune into all of their senses, but also to manage the sensory input, because too much sensory input for them is very, very overwhelming. And then steel energy. They love, the little scientists are steel energy children, so they love construction, loose parts play, as well as solitary play, reading and writing, and giving them the opportunity to retreat into their own space. Remember, being introverted doesn't mean you're antisocial. It just means that your energy reserves are depleted by being around people too much. But the opposite is true too. Your energy can be recharged by having time alone and being able to regulate that yourself. So it's a massive run through on the genius energies. So I would like to open up to any questions that people might have around the genius energies. I'll just see if I can see, excuse me, see chat to see if we have any questions. All right, we do have from Arthur Ramon. Can a child be more than one type? Yes, they can. We have a dominant energy, but we are all, sorry, we are all of the energies for sure. So some of the characteristics you'll see for one energy, we are all of the energies. So, the behaviors I've talked about and the characteristics that we've discussed are present for all of us, for every individual, every human being. But you're going to find that your child is going to have a dominant energy. So you will see that often you can identify it more easily by what triggers a behavioral challenge, or where your child might get overwhelmed more often. So, if you find that when you go to playgroup, your child's always hanging onto your leg and is really uncomfortable in engaging in social play until maybe halfway through the playgroup, then your child is likely to be on the steel side, or, maybe tempo steel. So yes, we're a combination of them all, but there will be a dominant temperament for your child. And we have a quiz we're launching soon that we'll be able to that we can share with you if you been part of this webinar, where you can answer some questions around different scenarios that your child's been in or you've been in, and the quiz will return the result of what temperament your child is. So that's one. How to handle Dynamo kids daydreaming and time management and daily routines. Yeah, this is a challenge, especially kids going to school. Absolutely. So I think the more Dynamo children do not like too much structure, but they do like choice. So the more choices you can give your Dynamo child around what's happening next, like I say, even if it's only 2 choices, they're still feeling empowered and like they're making a choice. Then the more likely the more likely it is your child will engage in what you're doing. The more likely it is your child will do what you want them to do. Often for children, full stop, not just Dynamo children, there's no sense of time. So the more notice you can give children, even if it's like different cues, or teach them to recognize when the hands on the clock move, or when the clock says a certain time, or 5-minute warning, 10-minute warning, 5-minute warning, 3-minute warning, 2-minute warning, right, we're going to go. So children do need to be reminded. So the more you can do like a countdown to remind them what's coming, the better. Solitary play, kind of give some examples of solitary play. Yes. So solitary play is basically children playing on their own. And what we need to make sure that if children everyone needs time on their own for sure, particularly if we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. So solitary play, the perfect solitary play is having the book corner. Well, there's no imperfect one, but book corner is really easy, sitting and reading a book on your own, doing puzzles on your own, having an opportunity to, having Lego or natural resources, but opportunities for them to take themselves off and play on their own if they want to. That can be challenging when you've got maybe 3 or 4 children in your care. But if you set rules around, if we go to this space, or if I say I want to spend time on my own, or if they indicate to you they need time on their own, then you can support them in doing that. But it's about having an environment where that child's need to have some time alone is respected by you, but also by other children in the group. So it's simply just time on their own, really, whatever they want to do, whatever supports them. This is an interesting question, Nihal. What if you're a tempo parent and have a Blaze child? This is why these quizzes are so valuable. And there's a quiz, like I say, that you can do to find out what your temperament is as well. Because you will find that every temperament has a certain parenting style, and your parenting style can be quite different to your child's natural temperament. But if we understand our child's natural temperament, then we can adjust our parenting style to meet the needs of our children. So, and it's important that we don't deplete the parent or the child. You're absolutely right there. So you have, what's this? We have different preferences, and entertaining my child and taking her to meet people or socializing can be depleting for the parent. It can be if you see it that way, but if you understand your child and you know that for them it's really challenging for them to be highly social when meeting new people, then you can start to prepare your child well in advance. You can teach your child about this person they're going to meet and tell them something about them, and set realistic expectations, so scaffold the learning. So even if your child can just make eye contact or just say hello the first time, so you're building their competence, their social competence as you go. Forcing them to say hello in a situation where they're in fear because they're very uncomfortable meeting this new person can actually set them right back, and it can have the opposite effect to the effect you're looking for. So the more you can help other people understand your child, rather than make your child do what they need to do for that other person, the better. So if we put the needs of the child first, adults should understand if your child's struggling. And if they don't understand, explain it to them. You know, that we're learning our social skills right now. So let you know, it's about just having a bit more patience. Oh, you meant it the other way around. Your child has a blaze temperament and you have tempo. Yep. So your house is going to feel very, very busy to you. And for you might sometimes feel overwhelmed by the busyness of your child, or you might not always want to go to social situations. The thing is, it's really important that your child does have that opportunity to experience social interactions with other children. So it could be that you organize play dates where it's not always in your home environment, so you're not feeling too overwhelmed, or other children, just one or two children, come and hang out with you in your place, however it works. It might not be that you have to go to a full-on play group every week, but even if you did, as long as that's for a set period of time and that you'd be able to cope with that situation as a tempo, it's just about how you balance your energy then. So what do you do to keep yourself, your own energy in balance? It could be that you have time at the end of the day, or it could be you have time to meditate or go for a walk, or whatever it might be that helps to keep you in balance. So it's again understanding it, and it's easier for adults, and you know, so I'll always focus on the child, because we have more choice, we have more autonomy about how our day runs. And yes, you might say it's easy to say that I've got a house full of 3 kids all day and that may well be the case, but you still have choices. You can still decide, today I'm going to go out, today I'm going to stay in, or we're going to do this, that, or the other, whatever it might be. So I think the key is having that awareness about your energy and the energy of your child, and finding a way that you can meet the needs of each. And it's essentially about reaching that point of understanding, so that we don't judge our children and label them as being shy or bossy or whatever it might be. We really understand that this is actually a life force within them. This is their unique genius. And the more I can embrace this, the more I can teach them to embrace their unique genius, because that is the part of them that's going to achieve the success, the happiness, and the fulfillment for the rest of their lives. We want to focus on what our children are good at and not make them wrong for their weaknesses. And that's the key to understanding all of this. Let's focus on their unique genius, the amazing things that they're good at, and grow those strengths in our children. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope it's hard to know the full question behind just a bit of text, but if not, just type in another question. And I don't think we have any more questions at the moment, so if we don't, then I will say thank you for joining. And you know, remembering our role is to support children to regulate their own emotions so that they can learn well, and to provide a variety of experiences and opportunities for learning. All geniuses need all experiences. We don't just say you're this genius, so we'll stick to this kind of play. Quite the opposite. What I'm saying is, if each genius has a different way of coping and a different temperament, and that's what we need to understand, whilst they have this wealth of opportunity in your learning environment. So if you do want to know what your genius is, there are we'll put these links into the chat in Facebook, and we'll send them out with the slides, and you can just go and take your own genius test and learn more about yourself. So enjoy that. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. And like I say, once we've launched this quiz for our young people, we'll get that to you as well. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but we have one more question in the Q&A.
Oh, geez, sorry. Yes.
Sorry. It's from Humaira Arshad. How the schools can support in this way of knowing every child is unique. Their expectations are usually same for all kids. Sometimes they do not give space to the kids. Thank you for
I
that
know.
question.
That's a fantastic question, and you know, we are on a mission to change that. It's the education system is very outdated, and it is very much a one-size-fits-all model, with all this standardized testing and lots. Well, I could go on, but and I totally agree. We do take these quizzes and the talent dynamics or teen dynamics tests into schools. We do, but not many schools A, have the budget, or B, know we even exist and what we do. I think every school should recognise every child as unique, and every school should be focusing on the strengths of children and not making them work on subjects they're weak on. Yes, they have to have the basic literacy, the basic mathematics, but we should then focus on what they're good at and grow that, because that's where they'll make the most valuable contribution to society. Unfortunately, that's not happening yet in schools, but it will. In time, it will. And the more people like you, the more people like me, and the more our children, our young geniuses, are taught how amazing they are and are empowered to have a voice and not tolerate being treated disrespectfully, then the education system in time will change, because it's not working. It's not working for all children, for sure. So we are part of that change, myself and all of you on the call, and certainly our children. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens. Okay, and sorry, we'll just take one more question. Oh dear, there's a crash on the motorway. Slides and recording, yes, Glenda, we can send out the slides and the recording, so don't worry. And for anyone here, if you want the recording, it's going to be available to you as well. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for the questions. I love to get into conversation about these things, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Okay, all right, take care, stay safe, stay well, and see you next time.